Hey everyone, welcome to another episode, the second episode of WoW Academy Live. If you're not familiar with WoW Academy Live, it's my new streaming format for my live streams here every week. My work schedule was changed a little bit, so the time is tweaked. It's now 6:30 p.m. on Mondays instead of 6 p.m. But every Monday you can show up here at 6:30 p.m. for WoW Academy Live, where we'll spend a third to a half of the stream covering a topic where I hope to help educate you in World of Warcraft and help you become casually confident at the game and playing. So definitely be sure to come and check that out. In the second 2/3 to a half of the show, we'll be taking what we learned and either applying it in like a dungeon run or something like that, or we'll just do some gameplay stuff to kind of switch gears and you know, have a little fun. So this is WoW Academy Live. I wanted to say, holy cow, you guys were absolutely amazing. The response to the first WoW Academy Live video has been really impressive. I've gotten like basically double the amount of average views on the first episode of WoW Academy Live as we normally get on live streams here on the channel. So it looks like you guys are at least curious or interested. So if you enjoyed that last episode, thanks for checking it out. I really appreciate it. I will say, no dislikes, which is great, but a little low on the likes. So I'm going to be throwing a couple reminders here and there throughout the stream to let you know, like, hey, if you're enjoying the video, throw a like on it, let YouTube know it was a cool vid and you want to see more and you want to share it with other people. So all that being said, we're ready to get into this week's episode. Now, last week I had talked about possibly coming back this week and talking about like a tanking class or, you know, something like that. And I was thinking about it and I was like, you know what? I kind of want to keep building on the fundamentals. I want to keep giving you these tools that you can use that are universal. They're not class specific. They're not spec specific. So I wanted to focus on that for this week as well. And we'll see. There's probably a couple more things. I know a lot of people have requested like generic role information, like how do I DPS? How do I tank? Not how do I warrior tank or demon hunter tank, just how do I tank? So I think what I'm going to focus on here for the first several episodes of WoW Academy Live is just trying to give you those generic tools that you can apply to whatever class or specialization you're playing. And in today's episode, what we're going to be talking about is we're going to talk about the spells and rotation in the game. Now, I know this sounds really generic and you might be thinking, Set, I know my spells, I can read. And that's not what we're talking about here today. We're not actually talking about just generic spells and rotations, okay? So we're going to be covering the understanding of spells and rotations in World of Warcraft, the game, not necessarily for a specific class. Like what generic types of spells and abilities are there? How do they work? How do they translate? What are the common threads that you see from class to class and spec to spec so that you can learn to get into your spell book and analyze the different spells and know how they fit into a rotation, how they fit into a build, how they're similar to spells in a different class that you may have already played or a different spec, or how they're different. And so that's going to help you just with that baseline understanding. If you have ever played like a MOBA, or if you've played maybe like a hero shooter like Overwatch or something like that, then you'll know there's a lot of common sort of skills that you see throughout different heroes, different champions. And even though they are different from champion to champion, they still have a base sort of niche that they fit into. I'll give you an example here. If you're playing a MOBA, there's something called a skill shot, right? And a skill shot is an ability that you use, but you have to point it in the right direction and aim it, okay? So that could be anything, right? It could be someone who shoots a gun in a direction. It could be someone who throws a hook and pulls an enemy in. It could be any number of things, but at its base level, that ability is called a skill shot because you have to shoot it using your skill in the right direction in order for it to be effective. And there's abilities and stuff like that in WoW that we're going to get in and we're going to talk about in this episode. Throughout the episode, I will be taking time to check in with chat. So if you have any questions, definitely throw them in the chat. If you have questions as you're watching this as a VOD, you can post those in the comments section below. I will get around to answering those. I may answer them on the weekly news video, or I may send you a reply on YouTube. So yeah, with all that said, I think we're good to get started here. I'm pretty excited. I hope you guys are going to enjoy this, and I hope it helps you out. So let's see. We got LT again. Heck yeah, hope you're doing well. I am doing pretty well. Carlton said, hit the like button like it's part of your rotation. Absolutely. I like that. I like that a lot. That's going to be our new I need to get that as a little graphic on the screen. I think that'd be, oh, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that. I'm going to put that in as a rotation. I like it. The like, subscribe, ring the bell. Good stuff. Awesome. Okay, so let's get in here and start covering this stuff, okay? So you guys saw this a little bit earlier, but here's what we're going to talk about, okay? And like I said, this isn't specific to a class or specialization. We're going to look at several classes and specializations as we go through and we talk about this, but we're going to look at resources, core builders and spenders, big cooldowns, CC or crowd control abilities, movement skills, utilities, role-specific abilities, and non-rotation abilities. So if you've watched one of my guides before, you're going to be familiar with a lot of these categories because this is how I break down and structure the way that I organize my spells. And I'm going to show you guys that here as well. But what I want to do in this video is I want to translate it to something generic, right? It's easy for me to go through and go, all right, guys, here's Pummel. It's your crowd control interrupt ability. But what I want you to be able to do is read the spell and know what it is and be able to put it into this category yourself, but also recognize between different classes and specializations. Oh, this is the interrupt. This is the interrupt. This is the interrupt. This is the builder. This is the spender. This is the big proactive ability, that kind of stuff. So we're going to look at a couple of different classes. In the last WoW Academy session, we used Prot Warrior as our example. So we're going to be skipping Warrior here. And we're going to look at some other classes instead. I'm going to try to change it up from week to week so that you guys can see the differences there. So the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about resources, right? When you get into your class, you need to look at what resources you have available. Now, I have a custom UI going right now, so my resources are a little bit weird. But you can normally find your resources. Let's jump into... Let's take a look at, let's go for Monk. You can normally find your resources around your character portrait, but you can also discover what resources you have through your spells and abilities, through the descriptions, because they're going to call out different things. And we'll see that here on the Monk when we get logged in. So if we are looking at the Monk, like I said, I have a custom UI set up here, but I'll make sure that you guys know how this corresponds to everything. So here, this green bar is my health, this yellow bar is my energy, and this section below is for my chi points. So we're going to cover what these are real quick. So when we get in, you can obviously look at your bar and you can see, oh, okay, I've got 3 different things going on here. So health is pretty obvious. All your characters have health. Some abilities may, use health as a resource. Particularly Warlock does that quite a bit. And then you may have, mana, or you may have runic power, or rage, or combo points, or whatever. But you can get a feel for that here looking at your character portrait. But then you can also jump into your spell book, which I don't think I have hotkeyed on this thing. And you can start going through your abilities and figuring out, okay, what do I have, right? So if we're looking at Blackout Kick here, you're going to see that normally right underneath the name of the ability, you're going to have whatever kind of resource it costs. So Blackout Kick cost 1 chi. Detox cost 20 energy, 15 energy. Fortifying Brew doesn't cost any resource, but it does cost time. It has a cooldown, and you have to managing cooldowns. That's a resource that you have to manage. You have to understand that. And we're going to really talk about managing your cooldown resources in a little bit, because that's something that I think as a beginner player, you often overlook. So we'll get to that. Leg sweep, no resource. Once again, that cooldown is the resource. Spinning crane kick uses 2 chi. Tiger palm uses 50 energy. So you can see as we're going through the abilities here, we're going to see these different resources that are available. Okay. And if that resource is right below the spell title, it's probably a resource that's on your player bar. Okay. There are other types of resources, which we'll also talk about here in just a little bit. But those are like what I would consider your big core, usually class-wide resources. So if I switch and I go to Brewmaster spec, okay, let's switch over to that. One of these keybinds here. And we'll take a look at a couple of abilities for the Brewmaster. So you're going to see my resources here didn't change, because in this case, as a Brewmaster, I have the same abilities, or the same resources. So Blackout Kick. Now, in this case, for Brewmaster, Blackout Kick doesn't cost a resource other than the cooldown. If we go through, Crackling Jade Lightning costs 20 energy plus 20 per second. Spinning Crane Kick costs 25 energy. It doesn't cost chi anymore. So even the same abilities from spec to spec that are shared could have different resources depending on what specialization you're playing. So you have to pay attention to that too. Here in the case of the Brewmaster Monk, a lot of our offensive like DPS style abilities cost energy, because it's actually more of our defensive abilities that end up costing us our other resources. So take a look at what your generic resources are. This is going to clue you in to understanding how your spells work. So let's switch back over to Windwalker here. So I can understand by looking at my player bar here and by looking at my spells that as a Windwalker monk, I'm going to have 2 resources that I'm using a lot, right? I keep seeing energy pop up, and I keep seeing chi pop up. So I need to understand, okay, those are my 2 resources. How do those resources work, right? And an easy way to get a feel for that is to look at the bars. Okay, if your bar is full, then that usually means that this is a resource that you're going to be spending at the outset. If it's empty, it usually means that this is a resource you're going to have to generate in order to use. And we're going to tie this into the next point here on the talents, core builders and spenders. So let's just talk about builders and spenders. What are builders and what are spenders? When we're going through our abilities here on the monk, if we take a look at Tiger Palm, you'll see that Tiger Palm costs 50 energy. So it spends energy. It costs us energy to use. It's a spender. Okay, but down at the bottom, underneath the description in white there, it says generates 2 chi. So it's also a builder because it builds a resource. If you want to think about this like going to work, and earning your paycheck, like what earns you the paycheck and what do you spend it on? In this case, Tiger Palm, you're having to spend that energy in order to get that 2 chi, in order to spend that on something else, like your Blackout Kick, right? So if an ability consumes a resource, we call it a spender. If an ability generates a resource, then we call it a builder, generally speaking. Now, in the case of the monk, we're looking at these 2 resources here, energy, and we're also looking at chi. Now, it's a good indicator that if your bar starts full, you're working with a spender and a resource that you're primarily going to be spending, not necessarily building. If your bar is empty, then chances are you're looking at a resource that you're primarily spending and building. Okay, so you have to build it up and then spend it, and then build it up and then spend it. So if you're not quite sure how your resource works, you can usually hit Wowhead and look at it and get a better understanding of what's going on. A lot of these resources, you just kind of figure it out by playing. But in the case of Monk, to clarify here, we have energy. And as we spend that energy, it automatically regenerates at a set rate. So we have to manage how much we spend versus how much gets regenerated. In the case of Chi, we have to build it up from 0, and then we can spend it on things. So we're taking a look at those resources in order to understand how our spells work. Now, there are other resources that might not necessarily be right there on your player bar or written off in that section of your spell book. And for this, we're going to look at Enhancement Shaman as an example. So we've already shown that if you're looking at an ability, if you look right under the name, it's probably going to show you the resource that you're going to use. We've also shown that at the bottom of the ability, a lot of times it'll tell you if it generates one of those main resources. Now, in the case of Enhancement Shaman, I've got health and I have my other resource here, which I don't have set up on weak auras, but that's okay. It's mana. So mana, we start with a full amount of mana and we spend it on abilities. If you look at Ancestral Spirit, you can see it cost 110 mana. If we flip over here, Crash Lightning cost 152 mana. Earthen Spike cost 103 mana. So in the case of Enhancement Shaman, we're mainly spending mana, but in reality, mana management isn't as big of a deal for an Enhancement Shaman. Yes, it's a resource that we use, and yes, you can technically run out of it, but at the end of the day, Enhancement Shaman is actually focused on utilizing different resources that aren't shown to you just in the tooltip under the name. You have to dig a little bit deeper. So we're going to talk about the other type of resource you could potentially find, and then we're going to talk about cooldowns as a resource. So if you're on Enhancement Shaman, then you need to look. A lot of times your passive skills will tell you about the resources that you have. In the case of Enhancement Shaman, we have Maelstrom Weapon. Okay, so this says when you deal damage with a melee weapon, you have a chance to gain Maelstrom Weapon, stacking up to 10 times. Anytime you see stacking, it's a good indicator that you might have a resource available there. Not always, but if you see stacks or you see charges, that's a good indicator that there's a resource hidden in this tooltip that interacts with your other abilities that you need to pay attention to in order to understand your spells and your rotation. So here, when we deal damage with a melee weapon, we have a chance to gain Maelstrom Weapon, stacking up to 10 times. Each stack of Maelstrom Weapon reduces the cast time, blah, 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 blah. Then it says a maximum of 5 stacks of Maelstrom Weapon can be consumed at a time. So what does that tell us? Okay, as we're damaging stuff, we can build Maelstrom Weapon to 10 stacks. We could spend 5 stacks at a time, and for each stack that we spend, we get an effect based on the tooltip here. So for Enhancement Shaman, this is a huge deal. This is a big part of our rotation, our spells, and our abilities. This Maelstrom Weapon, and we found it here in our passive abilities. They're always at the end of your spell book, and you can find those there. You also might look for other potential things the same way. So this isn't necessarily a resource, but it's another example. If we look at Crash Lightning and we look at the second paragraph, it says each target hit by Crash Lightning increases the damage of your next Storm Strike by 5%. So even though this isn't a resource in the traditional sense, it's an example of something that's hidden in the tooltip that we can manage and we can understand and we could use to better improve our rotation. So in this case, the more things we hit with Crash Lightning, the bigger buff we get for our Storm Strike ability. Now, you may find as you're going through the tooltips, you might find, oh, well, this interacts with Maelstrom Weapon this way. Or, oh, hey, here's this other stack, or these other charges, or this other effect that I can use. So when you're trying to understand your spells, the first thing I encourage you to do is to figure out what your resources are and to dig for those resources on your player bar, in your passive abilities, and in the tooltips for your weapon. Or for your spells. So the last resource to talk about here is cooldowns. So cooldowns are definitely a resource that you need to pay attention to. And as a new player, even as a longtime experienced player, it's easy to get caught up in, I don't know what it's easy to get caught up in waiting for the perfect moment to utilize your spells and abilities. So for this one, I actually want to jump in. We're going to hop into another class here. So we're going to hop over to my Paladin. And I want to show you guys an example of a couple of these. There's a lot of these on Warrior, but I used Warrior as an example last week. So changing it up here. So when I go through spells and abilities, a lot of times I look at the cooldown, and the cooldown kind of helps me to understand what type of ability it is. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. But what I want to emphasize here is understanding your gameplay time and the time that is passing in your session, and making sure that you're using that as a resource that you're not wasting. So here's a great example. On Paladin, I have an ability. If I can find it here. I'm losing it. Did they stick it? Where'd it go? Oh, it's right here at the start. Okay. I have this ability, Avenging Wrath. Okay. So Avenging Wrath, let's cover this real quick. It's an instant cast ability with a 2-minute cooldown. If you guys have watched my guides, then you know that I consider 2 minutes to be a fairly long cooldown, right? When it comes to a rotation, I'm thinking the stuff that I can do in the span of a minute, right? If I go up to an enemy that's not a tough enemy and I go blah, 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 and they die, what is that? What are those buttons that I'm pushing? However, here's what you have to consider as a new player, or even as an experienced player. Avenging Wrath is available every 2 minutes. If you're going through your rotation and you're just like, boom, boom, kill this, boom, boom, kill that, boom, boom, kill that, and just kind of cruising, then you may see a tough enemy and go, oh, this is a great time to hit Avenging Wrath. And you pop Avenging Wrath and you do a bunch of damage and you feel good and you're like, yes, I used it. Cool. And you move on and you attack some more enemies, go through some more mobs, and maybe, 10, 12 minutes later, you're like, oh, it's another big enemy, and you hit Avenging Wrath. Right? So let's say in the span of 30 minutes, you encounter 3 tough enemies and you use Avenging Wrath at the exact right moment and you take them down, and you've used that 3 times. In 30 minutes, you could use Avenging Wrath 15 times. But because you waited for that opportunity to use this ability on a specific enemy, or on a specific, circumstance, instead of getting to use Avenging Wrath and getting this bonus damage, healing, and critical strike chance 15 times in half an hour, you've only done this 3 times in half an hour. And what that does is it limits your DPS, it limits your damage, it limits how fast you're questing. So when I say understanding your cooldowns as a resource, think of it this way. In a lot of guides that you may watch, people tell you, don't cap on this resource. And I'm going to explain that in case you don't know. So in the case of Monk, right, I have energy. And it starts at full. And I spend it. And it regenerates automatically. Okay? Follow me? So if all that energy regenerates, and I'm not spending it, then I'm generating energy that just disappears. Okay, so if let's say that every second I generate 10 energy, and the maximum energy I can have is 100, right? So I'm at 100 energy, I spend 50 of it, and 5 seconds go by and I'm back at 100 again. Let's say another 10 seconds go by before I actually spend energy again. That's 100 energy potentially that I could have spent on abilities that's just gone. It's just wasted. I didn't do anything with it. That's what people mean when they say don't cap a resource. Don't hit the maximum amount of resource you can have and let it sit there without spending it, because you're essentially just wasting all that potential energy that you could have spent on abilities. So it's very easy to not think about time as a resource that you don't want to cap on. If you use Avenging Wrath and 2 minutes go by, and then another minute and another minute and another minute, there's time in there where you could have used Avenging Wrath, but you've capped on that resource and you've just let it go. Now, I'm not saying that in every situation you just need to press Avenging Wrath as soon as it pops up and it's available. Obviously, if you're traveling from point A to point B down a road, don't stop and hit Avenging Wrath, right? But learn to change and adapt your rotation and what you're doing in order to take advantage of this. If you think that Avenging Wrath is only good when you're in a tough situation and you need extra DPS, and so you've only been using it for those tougher enemies, well, instead, think every 2 minutes, I can pull 2 extra things because I can hit Avenging Wrath. I'll have the extra DPS to kill everything. Maybe normally you pull 2 or 3 things at a time. Every 2 minutes, you could pull 3, 4, 5 things at a time and hit Avenging Wrath and clear it out. And that speeds up your questing, that speeds up what you're doing. Same thing in a dungeon. It's easy to think, oh, I'm going to save all my cooldowns for the boss. But you want to time it so that, yes, you have those cooldowns on the boss, but if it takes you 10 minutes to get from boss A to boss B, you can Avenging Wrath 2, 3, maybe 4 times in between those bosses and still have Avenging Wrath for the boss. So I really wanted to point that out because I think, especially as beginners, it's something you don't think about. You get caught up in, oh, I need to save this ability for the exact right moment, instead of understanding that it's got a 2-minute cooldown, so you could use it every 2 minutes. And even as an experienced player, you get into that trap as well, because you have a bad, you run into an enemy and you're like, oh, I don't have my cooldowns. And then you just think about that later on. You're like, oh, if I hit this, what if I don't have it when I really need it? Run away. Run away if you have to in those situations. So that's covering like the resource portion of understanding your spells and abilities. I'm going to check in with chat because I see a lot of chat over here, so I want to make sure I get it. So let's see. Sean says, what up, what up? Thanks, Sean, for tuning in. Appreciate it. Paula says, never understood it this way. This was a very cool explanation. Awesome. I'm happy that that's the case. That's what I'm trying to do here. So as long as it's useful, that's great. My wife says, hello, good looking. I'm glad you still think so. Beth Razab, hey, you were a comment on on the preview episode of the weekly update. So you should check that out if you haven't seen it. Love your tutorial videos. Cool to catch one live. Awesome. Welfare Bob says, hi. Play Havoc Demon Hunter and I suck at it. Havoc Demon Hunter feels pretty squishy when you're leveling now. A lot worse than it did in BFA, in my opinion. So don't feel too bad. William says, great advice. I noticed how much more tanky I am on my Brewmaster when I started casting Ox on cooldown. Exactly. In the case of the Paladin here, I actually, I'm Night Fae. Night Fae? Night Fae? No. Arden? I don't know. What are they called? My mind blanked. Anyway, I'm the tree people. So I have the blessing ability. So this ability every 45 seconds, it's not Night Fae. Why is that? It's going to drive me nuts. I know who they are. Anyway, I have the Blessing of Seasons as my class ability. So the way this works is every 45 seconds, this blessing change. Like if I use this in 45 seconds, it'll be done with the cooldown and it goes to Blessing of Spring. And then when I cast that 45 seconds later, it'll be Blessing of Summer. And so this cycles through these 4 different buffs. And like, If I just sit there on one of the buffs because it's not the best time to use it, then I miss out on all those other spells that I could have cast in the meantime. So exactly, like using those abilities on cooldown when you're questing, when you're in a dungeon, is super, super important. Just in a generic sense. William says, I was being stingy with it and it was holding me back in Mythic Plus at least. Absolutely. My guild's name is Pop Cooldowns on Trash. Absolutely. Yep, amazing. Paulo says, I'm also being stingy with Vampiric Blood on DK. Yeah, same thing, man. You have to understand the dungeon and stuff that you're in, and that's totally different. Like, if you know there's a section coming up and you have to have this cooldown, then obviously don't just blow it randomly. But if you're just cruising, like, get yourself a weak auras notification or something to let you know, like, hey, you can use this, and, like, pop it if you know you can pop it, and definitely use it. That says, yeah, my daughter and I live by them. Awesome. Okay, so we have covered resources. Guys, give me a second. So now we're going to talk core builders and spenders, okay? So we know about our resources. We know that some of these resources we spend, some of these resources we build and spend. So when it comes to your rotation, a key thing to look at, and now we're moving kind of on from understanding that aspect of the spells into understanding like which ones are actually a part of your rotation, then you're going to want to pay attention to what builds resources and what spends them. Because in World of Warcraft, most of the time, the abilities that you have that build resources and spend resources are the abilities that you are trying to use all the time, especially if their cooldown is a minute or less. So we're going to hop on Death Knight here, just to kind of show off a different aspect. And I'll get this out of the way here. So, Death Knight, I've got runes, I've got runic power. My UI is a little messed up here. Let me actually, you can see the runes right underneath here. So, on Death Knight, I've got a couple of different resources that I'm trying to use, right? So, which ones build and which ones spend? So I have runes. Runes, I start with runes and I spend them. And then I have runic power. I start with no runic power. I have to build it and then spend it. So here's the thing. Most of the time, anything you build is something you also spend. Most of the time. Occasionally you'll have a stack or a charge that you don't actually spend. A great example of this is actually on Blood DK. So we'll look at this real quick because I like giving you like an actual example. So let me show you on Blood DK what I mean. Oh. So on Blood Death Knight, you have one of your main abilities is Marrowrend, okay? Marrowrend cost runes. So let's talk about these again. I have runes. I have runic power. Runes I start with and I spend them. So I spend runes on Marrowrend, right? The other thing that I have is my runic power. So if you look here, Heartstrike cost 1 rune and it generates 5 bonus runic power. So Marrowrend is a pure spender. It only spends my resources. Heartstrike is both a spender and a builder. It spends resources because it costs a rune, but it also builds resources because it grants me runic power. Just in the sense of what it's saying in the tooltip. Don't worry about the actual mechanics of the resources themselves, because they're all a little bit different. Like I said, you can hit Wowhead if you want the super like nitty-gritty behind-the-scenes details about it. But Marrowrend says, smash the target, dealing some damage and generating 3 charges of Bone Shield. Now, if you remember from earlier, I said that charges and stacks are another good indicator of a resource that you need to manage. So let's look at Bone Shield real quick. It says, surround you with a barrier of whirling bones, increasing your armor and your haste. Each melee attack against you consumes a charge. Lasts 30 seconds or until all charges are consumed. So, where I was going with this is an example of a resource that you're building, but you don't actually spend it. So like I said, in the case of most things that you build, I'd say 9 out of 10 things, 9 out of 10 resources that you build up, you also spend on things. So you build up runic power and you spend it. You build up combo points on a rogue or a feral druid and you spend them. You build up, rage on a warrior and you spend it. So if you build it, you spend it. But here is an example of an exception where you build up bone shields, but you don't actually spend them on anything. They're consumed when something happens. So that's another resource to look at, but also more importantly, it's an example of a builder that you don't spend. So going back over to Frost, and that's one of the best examples that I can show you. You actually build that up, but you don't spend it. It gets removed when you take melee damage, and then you build it back up. And then someone else removes it, and you build it back up. Defensive abilities work that way quite a bit. So jumping back into Frost, if we take a look at our abilities, so like I said, I've got runes, I've got runic power. Frost Strike is an ability that consumes runic power. Right? So this is a pure spender. Right? If we pop this back up, that's what we're talking about. Builders and spenders. Builders and spenders. So the thing to pay attention to here is the cooldown as well. Okay, so this costs runic power. It's instant cast, melee range. It doesn't have a cooldown. So this is a really good indicator to me that this is a spell or an ability that I'm supposed to use a lot, probably. If it doesn't fall into one of the other categories that you can see in the list here that we'll get to. So looking at that, I see the cost of a resource, low cooldown. All right, let's look at an opposite example. If we look at Breath of Sindragosa, this costs 16 runic power per second. Okay, so it's spending runic power, but it has a 2-minute cooldown. That's a pretty good indicator to me that this is not going to be a part of that main every single enemy rotation that I'm doing, because if I'm supposed to use it on every single enemy, there's an expectation there that I'm supposed to be able to do this every 15 to 45 seconds, right? Depending on my gear and, all that kind of good stuff. So even though this spends a resource, it has a high cooldown. So I wouldn't look at this immediately as like, oh, this should be a core builder or spender ability. If we look at Howling Blast, this costs 1 rune and it has no cooldown. Okay, it spends a resource and it has no cooldown. There's a good chance that that belongs in my rotation. Let's look at Wraithwalk. Okay, this says channeled. It doesn't spend a resource. It's got a 1-minute cooldown, which is probably like the top end of what I would consider. 45 seconds is probably where I would put most things that I would maybe consider in like that main rotation. But if we look through here, it doesn't generate a resource and it doesn't spend a resource. So there's a good chance, it's not 100%, but there's a pretty good chance that this isn't actually part of my rotation. Let's look at Obliterate. Obliterate costs 2 runes. It's instant cast, has no cooldown. Okay, it spends a resource and it has no cooldown. So there's a pretty good chance it belongs in there. What about Remorseless Winter? This costs 1 rune. It has a 20-second cooldown. That's still pretty low. Pretty good chance that this will also be a part of my rotation. So let's take that principle and let's look at it on another class here. Same general concept, but we're going to look at a totally different resource. So let's jump into Warlock. And let's take a look at this. We're just going to use that same thing that I talked about. I'm not going to use my class knowledge and everything. We're going to look at those abilities through that lens that I just pointed out. Like, does it build a resource? Does it spend a resource? What's the cooldown looking like? Okay, so if we get into this one, we're here on Demonology. So if we look at Call Dreadstalkers. Oh, well, first, let me make sure, let me catch you up. Warlock has two main resources that you're going to see on the player bar. We've got mana, and this is bugged out. It should be 100%. And we have soul shards. So soul shards are interesting because you start with 3, usually, and you spend them and build them. So it's kind of an odd resource in the sense that you start with some of it, but not the maximum that you could have. So those are our main 2 resources that we're using. So if we look at Call Dreadstalkers, this cost 2 soul shards, okay, as a 20-second cooldown. So using the rules that we just talked about, okay, it's spending a resource and it has a short cooldown. Chances are this is part of that main rotation. What about Demon Bolt? Okay, Demon Bolt costs some mana, doesn't have a cooldown, and if we look at the bottom, it says generates 2 soul shards. So this spins, and it builds, and it has no cooldown. Good chance this belongs in my rotation somewhere. What about Hand of Gul'dan? 1 to 3 soul shards, no cooldown. Pretty good chance. What about Summon Demonic Tyrant? Okay, this costs 1,000 mana. It generates 5 soul shards, but it has a 1.5-minute cooldown. So this indicates to me that I definitely want to pay attention to this. This is probably a really important ability because I'm spending on it, I'm building from it, but it's got that 1.5-minute cooldown, which is a little too high for me to think like I'm supposed to push this button on every single enemy or group of enemies. It might be every other, or 1 in 3 that you're pushing this on, just depends. So that's a pretty good indicator as well. If we look at Burning Rush, instant cast, no cooldown, doesn't spend anything, doesn't generate anything. Probably not part of my rotation. So you can use those general rules and apply that to kind of figure out what are your core builder and spender abilities. Now, not every class is necessarily going to have stuff laid out like that so simply. I'm trying to think of what's a good one to show you. I think possibly healers are a pretty good example. So let me show you on Resto Shaman. Not every class has builders and spenders. A lot of them just have spenders. And in the case of healers in particular, your spenders, like everything spends mana. So healers are a little bit different. If we switch over to Resto here, I'll give you an example. So by default on a Restoration Shaman, you don't actually have anything that you're building up or spending. Your only resource is mana. And almost every ability you have costs mana, right? Ancestral Spirit costs mana. Let's get into Resto. Vision, mana. Earth Shield, mana. Healing Rain, mana. Healing Tide, mana. However, what you can do is you can still apply the cooldown rule to kind of take a look, right? So if we look at Healing Rain, this has got a 10-second cooldown. Pretty good chance it could be part of that healing rotation. Now with healing in particular and tanking, I guess a lot of stuff is potentially situational. Like you're not necessarily hitting Healing Rain every time it's, available, but that low cooldown is again a good indicator that this is probably something you fit into that normal rotation. Healing Tide Totem, on the other hand, has a 3-minute cooldown, so probably not. Healing Wave, no cooldown. Lava Burst, 8-second recharge, so that's pretty low. Probably fits in. Healers are a weird bunch. This is actually a damage ability, but you would look at it, right? You would at least look at it, go, oh, 8-second recharge, what's this about? And then you would read it and go, oh, okay, this deals damage. It doesn't actually heal. Purify Spirit is an example of instant cast 8-second cooldown. At first glance, it would look like something that you would potentially consider putting into your rotation, but hopefully you would read the text and understand like, oh, okay, maybe not. This sounds pretty situational. So sometimes I would say usually on mana, I would say pure mana specializations, you do have to dig a little bit deeper. But in general, like use the cooldown rule. Riptide, that's a great place to start. Riptide, 6-second recharge, probably in there. Spirit League Totem, 3-minute cooldown, probably not. I would say that a minute is kind of the maximum that I would look at for that main rotation most of the time. So that's how you can kind of get a feel for what your core builders and spenders are going to be. Next, we're going to talk about big cooldowns. But we're going to check in with chat here before then. Bone Storm. I like it. Oh, man. Let's see. Let's see. So Beth, 14. Play WoW together. Every time she tries out a new class, first thing she does is follow my guide. Oh, that's nice. I need to get, I'm going to get those guides. They're kind of going to be updated through WoW Academy Live. So that's coming after we kind of cover the basics here. Sonar says, good to see after 6 years away from this game, the simpletons still jump around for no reason. It's fun to jump around, man. Okay. So let's talk about big cooldowns. And since we're on Resto Shaman, I think healers and tanks are a great example of this. Actually, let's break it down on a DPS class first. So let's jump into Rogue. And I'll explain what I mean by big cooldowns. Okay, so obviously I just kind of said that the 1 minute mark is about the cutoff where I generally would consider it to be part of my normal just killing things rotation. It's a different story for like a raid boss or anything like that, dungeon boss, obviously. But in general, if you're just like killing trash or you're out there questing, leveling, doing some world quests, getting some renown, whatever it is you're doing in Shadowlands, minute is kind of where the cutoff would be for me. So that means anything that has a cooldown above 1 minute, or even some of the stuff that's at 1 minute, depending on what it is something that I would consider a big cooldown, a long cooldown. And I usually categorize these into 3 different groups. Okay, so I look at these as proactive, reactive, and utility. And I say proactive and reactive because I think the intent, the mentality when you're looking at these is the same, even though the application might be different. So let's explain what I mean. So let's start with utility, right? Utility is any ability that doesn't directly affect your survival or your role-specific output, which would be like tanking, healing, dealing damage, right? So anything that's odd, that's off the wall. So a good example, let's see if we can find one here on Rogue. We might have... that's kind of... Okay, Shroud of Concealment is a pretty good example here. So this is an ability, it has a 6-minute cooldown. And this says that it extends a cloak that shrouds party and raid members within 30 yards in the shadows, providing stealth for 15 seconds. So when you hit this button, it doesn't do anything to save you, right? When you hit this button, it doesn't help you increase your DPS. As a rogue, like that's what we're doing. We're doing damage. When you hit this button, it does something else that's useful, right? But not necessarily proactive or reactive to a situation. It's a utility thing. So this is kind of where I would put those sorts of abilities. And longer cooldown abilities like this are a little bit less common. You'll find a lot of them in Shaman or Hunter, where it's like, hey, you can push this button to see through the eyes of this target over there. And it's like, okay, that doesn't help me survive. That doesn't help me do more damage, but it is just kind of a off ability that might have a 3-minute cooldown or something that I can use. So those are the least common, and in my opinion, kind of the least important category out of these 3. Not that they're not important. So those would be the utility ones. If we look at reactive abilities, when I think reactive, I'm thinking defense. What helps me survive? What helps me to react to a bad situation in order to turn it into something good? Okay, so for a rogue, a good example of that is going to be Vanish. Okay, so Vanish has a 2-minute cooldown. It's on that longer end of the spectrum, and it says allows you to vanish from sight, entering stealth while in combat. For the first 3 seconds after vanishing, damage and harmful effects received will not break stealth. Also breaks movement impairing effects. So when I hit this button, I disappear off the grid, right? Anything that's attacking me no longer knows that I'm there. I'm gone, and on top of that, if there's any like AoE or any bad effects on me or whatever, they're not going to break my stealth for 3 seconds, so I can hit Vanish and I can run away. That's a good example of something that's reactive. Like, okay, I'm taking all this damage and I vanish because I'm in a tough situation. Now, a lot of these abilities that you would consider reactive could potentially be used in proactive ways, but I don't want to get into that in this particular session because that's more of an advanced level concept. But I just want you to know, like, there's situations where you can hit Vanish and turn that into a DPS gain, and you could do that with some of these abilities as well. But in general, we're just sticking to the generic reactive, help me survive, defensive style abilities here. Let's see if we have another decent one here. Fleshcraft is potentially one here. This is a special non-rogue ability, though. This is a Covenant ability. Cloak of Shadows. Here we go. Cloak of Shadows is another one. So this has a 2-minute cooldown. It says provides a moment of magic immunity, instantly removing all harmful spell effects. The cloak lingers, causing you to resist harmful spells for 5 seconds. So you get a bunch of harmful magic effects on you, you Cloak of Shadows, and it removes all of them and gives you resistance to harmful spell effects for 5 seconds. That's a great one. Evasion, here's another one. 2-minute cooldown, increase your dodge chance by 100% for 10 seconds. So hopefully you're getting the idea here with these longer cooldowns that I consider reactive, right? When I read them, I think, oh, that's going to help me live. That's going to help me get rid of something bad. That's going to help me survive. That's going to help me get out of a tough situation in terms of protecting my own life, my own health bar. And then the final type here of big cooldown would be what I consider proactive. And I say proactive because if I say offensive, then I think it kind of gets a little confused when you get into tank and healing specs. So let's think of proactive. This is stuff that you are taking advantage of ahead of time proactively to improve the performance of your role's main focus. So if we're on a rogue and our goal is to deal damage, then these would be the abilities that proactively help us deal more damage. And so if we get into Outlaw here, we would be looking at stuff like Adrenaline Rush. Okay, this ability has a 3-minute cooldown. It says it increases your energy regeneration rate by 60%. So we're getting back one of these resources that we have much faster. So we can spend it at a much more increased rate than we normally could, which translates to hitting more abilities that deal damage, doing more damage in that time frame. It increases our maximum energy and increases our attack speed. So everything about that to me screams, do more damage, be proactive, do more of what your role does, be more proactive. So that is a great example from Rogue. So I think we have enough DPS examples. I want to jump in and show you what I mean on tank and healers as far as proactive goes. My wife is requesting a warlock guide. What specialization? Okay, so if we're looking at warrior, okay, let's go through that same thing, right? So we talked about utility. That might be something like intimidating shout. 1.5 minute cooldown. It fears enemies, right? So that's more of a utility big cooldown. It doesn't do damage to them. It doesn't necessarily, it can kind of protect you, but you know, we'll look at it as utility for right now. Or you could think, yeah, intimidating shout's a decent example of that. If we think about a reactive ability for a protection warrior, we're thinking about what helps me survive. And you may think, like, as a tank, isn't that just what I do? Like, I just survive. Like, that's my role. That's what I'm supposed to do. No. Yeah. Yes and no. Okay. So as a tank, yes, you are supposed to survive. You are supposed to take damage, but there's another component where you're supposed to maintain threat. You're supposed to control enemies. You're supposed to make sure that those enemies out there are attacking you. So if you just ran up to the enemies and stood there and hit your defensive abilities, they would run off and they would attack your friends. They would attack the healer. They would attack the DPS, your other party members. You have to be proactive in generating that threat, that attention from those enemies and keeping it. So when I think of these big cooldowns for a tank, I make that distinction. What is reactive? What helps me stay alive? What helps me survive? What protects my health pool, my health bar? And that's where you might find something like, and of course I'm Spect Fury right now for whatever reason. So I'll switch over. Intimidating Shout is on protection as well, so still a fine example. That's where something like Shield Wall comes in. So Shield Wall has a 4-minute cooldown, well outside of the range of that 1 minute area that I was talking about. And it says reduces all damage you take by 50% for 8 seconds. Boom, there we go. I'm protecting myself. I'm protecting my health pool. Another great example is Last Stand, 3-minute cooldown. Increases my maximum health by 30% for 15 seconds and instantly heals me for that amount. So, okay, I get a boost of health and I get to heal. I'm protecting myself, protecting my health bar. I'm reacting to a bad situation to try to survive and break through. Now, proactive is stuff that helps me do my job as a tank. So, a good example of this is Challenging Shout. Okay, so this is an ability with a 4-minute cooldown. It taunts all enemies within 10 yards to attack you for 6 seconds. So does this protect my health? No, it doesn't. You could look at this, and like I said, you can split hairs on the terminology here. I'm just telling you how I think about it, and you can translate that however you want across, you know, your observation, your look at abilities. In this case, I'm thinking, I want to tank harder. How do I tank harder? Boom, Challenging Shout. I taunt everything within 10 yards and go, attack me, I'm the tank. So that to me is a great example of an ability that is proactive on my part. I hit that button and I'm like, you're going to attack me. Pay attention to me. Another one here. As tank, I think I protect the party. I protect the health pool of the party. I want to help. We've got Rallying Cry here. This grants all party or raid members within 40 yards 20% temporary and maximum health for 10 seconds. You could put this in a couple different categories, but I see this as like, oh, my job's to protect the party. I can hit Rallying Cry and help boost up my party's health if I know, things are getting out of control or there's a big, damage buff incoming. So, like I said, you can split hairs on where this stuff goes, but that's generally how I look at it. If we hop over to a healer, and we'll hop over to Shaman, just because I already have that one on the right spec, it's the same sort of thing. You've got your utility big cooldowns, you've got your defensive ones that protect your health and your health bar, and then for the proactive ones, you're looking at abilities that help you heal better. That's what your role does. You heal, so what's going to help you heal even better? So if we look at these and we get in here, you're going to have your utility stuff like Spirit Walker's Grace. This has a 2-minute cooldown and it lets you move while casting, right? So that's just kind of a neat utility thing that you could do in situations where you need it. You've got stuff like your Astral Shift. This is a 1.5-minute cooldown. This causes you to take 40% less damage for 8 seconds. So that's one of those abilities that protects your health. That's a reactive big cooldown. And then if we get into something like, I don't want to do Spirit Link Totem because that is just like, it's too much. Healing Tide Totem. This 3-minute cooldown, it says summons a totem at your feet for 10 seconds, which pulses every 1.7 seconds, healing all party or raid members within 40 yards for 133. So when you hit this button, it increases what you do for your role. It increases your healing, right? So to me, this is a proactive. So that's an example of Spirit Walker's Grace, utility big cooldown. You got your Astral Shift, your reactive big cooldown, and then you have your Healing Tide Totem, your proactive big cooldown. So that's how I tend to categorize these, and I look at these as big cooldown abilities, the abilities that I hit in those big moments where I need a big change or a big effect. And depending on how long that cooldown is, depending on how important that ability is, that also determines, do I hit Avenging Wrath every 2 minutes? Do I hit Healing Tide Totem every 3 minutes, no matter what? Or are there certain areas, certain places in a dungeon where I need to have that available? So, I might hold off on using it when I could to have it in that situation. So that is the big cooldowns. And that's kind of where I go. What are my resources? All right, what are my core builders and spenders? What are my big cooldown abilities that I need to pay attention to? Next, the next category here is our CC or crowd control abilities. So these are abilities that allow us to control the enemy in some aspect. It might be literally mind controlling the enemy. It could be turning them into a sheep. It could be stunning them. It could be interrupting a spell that they're casting. It could be slowing down their movement speed. It could be pushing them back. Anything that affects the enemy in a particular way, and it's not just deal damage or prevent damage. It has some utility purpose to it that helps you control the flow of battle. This comes in a lot for tanks in particular. They usually have a lot of these abilities. Prot Warrior has a bunch of them. But your utility or your healing classes and your DPS classes have them a lot as well. And so before we get too deep into crowd control, because this is kind of the point where I want to point this out to you, we've been flip-flopping around between classes as we've gone through this explanation, because I want to show you that in WoW class design, these things are common threads. You're going to see them everywhere. We looked at multiple classes, multiple specializations that had builders and had spenders, that had big cooldowns, that had different resources. And you're going to see that most classes have some kind of crowd control ability. Most classes have an interrupt. So this is a great example of a crowd control ability. On Shaman, we have Wind Shear. This is a 12-second cooldown. It disrupts the target's concentration, interrupting spell casting and preventing any spell in that school from being cast for 3 seconds. So let's check a different class. What about Rogue? We were just in on Rogue. So we'll load up Rogue here, and I'll be checking chat after this little segment. You guys, if you're enjoying the video, throw a like on it. Definitely appreciate that. Show YouTube that it's good and you want to share it with people. Okay, so let's jump into Rogue. My wife's yelling at me. Now she distracted me. Blame her. Kick. Okay, instant cast, 15-second cooldown. A kick that interrupts spell casting and prevents any spell in that school from being cast for 5 seconds. Whoa, that's crazy. It's almost like it's basically the same ability that the Shaman had. Okay, what about Warrior? What if we get into Warrior here? Are we going to have something similar on Warrior? You guys can probably guess. You probably already know. You probably know at this point. I'm just beating the dead horse because I'm sure you get it. But if we get into Warrior, we're going to have Pummel. Hey, instant cast 15-second cooldown. Pummels the target, interrupting spell casting and preventing any spell in that school from being cast for 4 seconds. So the reason I've been flip-flopping around is because like my goal in this is to show you that there are common threads between all the classes and specializations. And if you can understand these fundamentals, you can move from one class to another, one specialization to another pretty fluidly. You might have to like register the terms, you know, like, okay, Maelstrom weapon stacks on Shaman versus combo points on Rogue versus chi points on Monk, you know, or, you know, okay, I've got runes on a Death Knight that I spend, or it's energy that I'm spending here, it's focus that I'm spending there. But a lot of times, like, the names and stuff change, and the exact effect might change, but at the core, you're still dealing with resources, builders, spenders, big cooldowns, crowd control abilities. So anytime you see an ability like that, where it says interrupt, if you've got one that stuns, like we have Shockwave, stuns all enemies within 10 yards for 2 seconds. Cool, that's a great one. What's another one here? Let me see. I don't know if I have another good one. Charge. So when you charge and you hit the target, you root them for 1 second. That's a crowd control ability because it can't move for that 1 second. Hamstring reduces the enemy's movement speed by 50% for 15 seconds. So these are like great abilities that are good examples of crowd control. So those are going to be really important. And usually the most important ones for you to pay attention to are your low cooldown interrupt and your low cooldown stun for PvE content. For PvE, you're also looking for like low cooldown stuff that will slow your opponent as well. So even though hamstring may not be particularly useful in a lot of cases in PvE, it is useful in PvP. Regardless, pummel is useful all the time. Your short stuns that you have are useful all the time. So consider your crowd control abilities next. My ears keep wanting to hear soul shards, and I bet money he's wanting to say it. Affliction Warlock, got it. Shields up, absolutely. Even within classes, specific specs work differently, like Insanity for Shadow. Absolutely, but you'll find that if you look at Shadow Priest, you're going to have abilities that generate Insanity, which is your resource, and then abilities that spend Insanity. So you're looking at the same thing. What are my resources? Oh, okay, I have mana, I have Insanity. What are my builders? What builds up Insanity? Okay, what are my spenders? What spins that Insanity? What are my big cooldowns? What are my crowd control abilities? You can take this same approach and look at Shadow Priest and kind of start fitting the pieces together. And that's hopefully that's what I'm conveying here is how that all comes together. So the next thing that I'd look at, oh, it's my wife. You can show it off later if you want. She crocheted a Link hat, which is pretty cool.
I dyed the yarn too.
Oh yeah, and she dyed the yarn. So next I would look at my movement abilities, right? Because I want to get from place to place. I want to keep up. So I'd go through, and I think movement abilities hopefully are pretty self-explanatory, but anything that jumps me from place to place, anything that gets me from point A to point B, anything that speeds up my movement speed. We're here on Warrior, so we've got charge an enemy. It's got an 8 to 25 yard range. Boom, I'm over there. We've got heroic leap through the air toward a target location, right? So that's obviously a movement ability. In the case of being Venthyr has a covenant ability, Door of Shadows. Boom, that's a movement ability. They've got the soul shape. I keep saying night. Is it Night Fae?
Night Fae.
It's Night Fae. Okay, I'm going crazy here. The Night Fae have soul shape. That's a movement ability. It's a blink. If we go over to, since I said blink, if we go over to mage, did I say blink because it rhymes with link? I don't know.
Probably.
But if we go over to Mage, we've got our Blink ability that teleports us forward. So figure out what those movement abilities are and incorporate those in. They're obviously not part of your rotation, but every class has some sort of movement ability that's accessible either through the baseline spellbook or through their talents. I want to say that Warlock and Priest are the only two that don't have a baseline movement ability. I might not be 100% correct on that, but I think like every other class pretty much has something baseline that will boost their movement speed. So if we're on Mage, so for Mage, where are we at here? I've got Shimmer. It's weird that they put it under Arcane, but I guess it's because it's coming from a talent, even though it's a talent that every mage has access to. So normally, instead of Shimmer, which I've got through a talent, I would have Blink, and Blink is right here. So Blink will teleport me forward, and essentially Shimmer does the same thing. So Shimmer also teleports me forward. So that's a movement skill ability there. If we drop over to something like Hunter, hunters have an ability aspect of the cheetah that will boost their movement speed. So once again, just figuring out, most classes have one of these and you want to isolate it and go, yep, this is the button I'm going to hit a lot to go faster. So movement speed abilities are pretty simple, pretty straightforward. So if we're looking at our hunter here, like I said, we've got aspect of the cheetah. Increase your movement speed by 90% for 5 seconds, and then by another 30% for 9 seconds. This is an example of an ability that I would consider a movement ability and also a big utility cooldown because it has a long cooldown. It doesn't help me deal more damage. It doesn't help me protect my health bar, but it does something else. So that's a great example of that. So next, we want to look at utility abilities. That kind of go into our rotation. So these are going to be abilities that, if you think about it in terms of the big cooldowns, they fall into the same sort of categories, right? Where instead of helping us actively deal damage or protect ourselves, they do other stuff that we might possibly need. And I don't know that Hunter is the greatest example because most of their stuff falls into the other categories. You have like Freezing Trap, but that's a crowd control ability. You have like Hunter's Mark, but Hunter's Mark, I don't know if I consider that part of my rotation. So we're going to switch to a different class here. We're going to go back over to our Resto Shaman and take a look at some of these. We can also look at our Paladin. Paladin is a great example for some of these abilities as well. Oh, just an exception to the priest use mana type thing. Yeah, absolutely. Gotcha. Yeah, even within, what he's saying is even within classes, you have examples of like 2 specializations for priest just use mana as their player bar resource. But then you have a 3rd specialization, which is Shadow, which uses mana, but also has this extra insanity bar. Druid's another great example because if you're in bear form, you have rage. If you're in cat form, you have energy and combo points. If you are in boomkin, you have mana, and then you also have a bunch of other weird stuff going on that you got to figure out in your tooltips. And then if you're resto, you just have mana. So that's true. Within a class, even the resources you have available can differ greatly. So jumping back over to utility spells here. So if we get in here, this is where we find something like Purify Spirit, which we talked about earlier, right? This is instant cast, 8-second cooldown, removes all curse and magic effects from a friendly target. This doesn't protect your health. It doesn't help you heal. It does help you prevent damage, which is another great thing you can do as a healer. But for me, that kind of falls into that utility category because if the target doesn't have a curse or magic effect on them, this ability is useless. But when they do, this ability is great because you can get rid of it. So this is a great example of a utility ability. And the difference here that I want to make is, if we already talked about utility abilities, but we talked about them in the context of big cooldowns. I'm talking more about the utility abilities that don't have big cooldowns, that you can recognize and acknowledge as being utility abilities. So with this in mind, if you think about your healer, think about this resto shaman here. Your main goal as a healer is to heal, to keep all the health bars topped off, to, recover the damage that your party takes. But if you have stuff like Lava Burst here, which is a damage dealing ability, or you have Chain Lightning, or you have Lightning Bolt, these are abilities that deal damage. And on a healer, you're trying to heal. So even though if you switch over to Elemental Shaman, these abilities are like core builders and spenders, core parts of your rotation, on a healer, they're more utility. Because if you need to heal, you're going to be healing. If you don't need to heal, then you could switch over and do some damage, do some DPS. So you're going to look for these abilities that are usable on a fairly regular basis because they have low cooldowns, but don't necessarily fit that primary purpose of what your role is trying to do. And those are the ones that I would drop into this utility category. It's kind of like all the other useful stuff that I maybe won't be using all the time. And that kind of ties in as well with the role-specific stuff that I mentioned there, where once again, you're kind of making that distinction between what is specific to what your role's goal is and what is not. So in the case, this really comes down to me a lot for tanks and healers. So if you're on a healer and everybody's topped off and everybody's good, you could just stand there and do nothing, or you could get out of those role-specific abilities and start casting some damage-dealing abilities. Whether that means that you're casting Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning and stuff on a Resto Shaman, or whether it means that you are doing your Moonfires and your Wraths and stuff on your Resto Druid, or, you're hitting people with melee and casting your... Lost the ability name there. I was going to be like Hand of Justice, and I'm like, no, that's the stun. But, casting some of your, Protection Paladin DPS or your Paladin DPS abilities on a Holy Paladin, you can kind of step out of that role-specific stuff and look at those other abilities that you can use. Now, I did want to show you on Protection Paladin a couple of these utility and role-specific abilities as well, just for another example, to show you how these exist between different classes and different specializations, but they still fall into these broad categories. So this is an example from the tank side. We just kind of looked at the healer side. Let's look at the tank side here. So on the Protection Paladin, I've got stuff like Blessing of Freedom. So this has a low cooldown, 25 seconds. It spends some mana, so maybe you'd look at it and go, oh, maybe this is part of my core builder spender set, but it's not, because we get into the text and it says blesses a party or raid member, granting immunity to movement impairing effects for 8 seconds. So this is obviously more of a utility ability, because if you don't need to do this, you're not going to cast this ability. You might not have a party or raid member, or you might only have yourself, and this doesn't help you. So this is definitely a utility example. And if we get in here and we look at something, another great example, on Protection Paladin, I'm tanking, right? I'm not the healer, but I have access to Flash of Light. This is an ability that heals a friendly target. So even though this is an ability that's not within my role, it's an ability I still have access to and can use in particular situations. So maybe I'm doing just fine tanking and I'm not really taking any damage, but I don't know, my buddy over here is. I could maybe throw a couple heals if the healer's dead, or if you're on a Ret Paladin and you're dealing damage and the healer goes down and like somebody needs some heals, maybe you could do this. I'm not saying that's a great option, a smart option, or the actual best option in that situation, but you have access to these other tools that are outside of your role. And recognizing that they are in your spellbook, they exist, and you could use them, and understanding that they're in that category of being non-role specific is super important because it'll help you rule them out. As a protection paladin, at no point is Flash of Light part of my rotation, right? My rotation does not include healing via Flash of Light. It does include healing via Word of Glory, which is like a whole different deal. That's a great example of like, here's two abilities that heal, but one of them is not part of what I do as protection paladin in most scenarios, whereas another one is pretty common to use. And the main reason for this is you get to cast Word of Glory for free under certain situations. So it becomes part of, you just throw out a Word of Glory. So that's getting into those role-specific and utility abilities. The final category here, after almost an hour and a half, the final category here is going to be your non-rotation abilities. So these are the abilities that you look at and you acknowledge these don't get used in combat, like, period. And this is stuff like Redemption. So Redemption is a ability that brings a dead ally back to life with 35% of maximum health and mana and cannot be cast when in combat. So here's an ability that you don't need to worry about as far as understanding your rotation, because you literally can't use this in combat. There are some abilities that let you resurrect someone in combat, and that would definitely be something that you consider. That's probably a big utility cooldown, or maybe a big reactive cooldown, depending on how you want to look at it. But in the case of Redemption, you can't even use this in combat, so it's out. And there are a lot less of these abilities in the average spellbook than there are these other types of abilities we've already talked about. But a good example of a class that has quite a few of these is Rogue. Hunter has quite a few as well. I mean, they definitely exist, and that's why they're worth mentioning. But we'll see here in Rogue, there's quite a few that just don't apply to combat at all. So we've got Detection. Focus intently on trying to detect certain creatures. You can pop that in combat, but at that point, you're kind of already fighting. I'm not saying that you never would, but generally you're kind of like using this ahead of time to try to find things. Better examples would be Pick Lock. This is something you can open locked chests. I don't think you're doing that in combat. If you are, then I mean, I guess you got a lot of free time. Pickpocket lets you pick the target's pocket, something you can't generally do in combat because it requires stealth. So that's another great example. Your poisons are an example of a non-rotation ability that you have access to, because you do want to have your poisons applied and they're important in combat, but generally speaking, you're applying them ahead of time, so they're already good to go. So that's another great example. Stealth is a great example because you have to be out of combat in order to stealth. So even though stealth does play into the other stuff that you're doing as a rogue, this is a non-rotational ability, generally speaking, because you're just going to hit this ahead of time once again. So there's a lot of these types of abilities that are out there, but like I said, they're generally, Rogue has a lot of them. Most other classes don't. So that kind of caps off like what we're talking about here, the general understanding the spells and rotation. So I'm going to run it back through real quick, just kind of a, what's the word here? Synopsis at the end, a recap. So when you're getting into your spells and rotations, I want to re-emphasize this. The purpose of talking about this was hopefully to help you understand how these things that I've listed are common across multiple classes, multiple specializations in World of Warcraft. The colors of the resources might be different. The names of the resources and the stacks might be different. The names of the abilities could be different. But at their core, they almost always fall into one of these categories, regardless of the specialization. And if you can understand these categories, these spell categories, and how these fit into your rotation, then you can jump from one class or specialization to another with a lot less trouble and feeling a lot less overwhelmed than you normally would. So when you're getting onto a new class or a new specialization, or even one that you're playing right now, and maybe you just don't feel like you have a great grasp on it, take a look at your resources. What do you have on your player bar? Take a look through your abilities, look at your passive abilities, look at your tooltips, dig out if there's any other resources in there that aren't covered by your player bar. Stacks, charges, that kind of stuff. Take a look at your core builders and spenders. Look at the abilities that are going to generate resources or spend resources and have a low cooldown. I'd say a minute or less. And look at those, because those are probably going to be the ones that you're using almost every single fight. Then go through and look at your big cooldowns and put them into those categories. What helps me proactively be better at what my role does? What helps me DPS more? What helps me heal better? What helps me tank better? What is more of a reactive ability that helps me protect my health bar? Okay, what reduces damage or boosts my health or heals me? What gives me utility options? With the long cooldown. Maybe, like I said, Hunter, you've got a speed boost ability, but it's on a long cooldown, so maybe that's more of a utility. Get in and find your crowd control abilities. Almost every specialization has a baseline low cooldown interrupt that you want to have access to. A lot of them have a minute or so cooldown stun that you can get access to. There's things that slow down, movement speed, all that kind of stuff. Dig in, find those crowd control abilities, put them all together on your action bar so hey, if I need to mess up what they're doing, I hit one of these buttons and it's going to do something to that effect. Find your movement skill abilities, because you're going to want to get from point A to point B as fast as you can. And almost every class and specialization has some type of movement speed increasing ability. That's going to help you not just get from point A to point B, but also run out of a bad situation. Look at your utility spells, the stuff that you don't necessarily use in a defense or in a proactive or reactive way, like we talked about, but that have special cases where you might use them, but in general, you're only going to use them in those special cases, not all the time. Dig in and figure out what stuff is specific to your role and what stuff might be like a side role. Or, if you're a healer, dig out those damage dealing abilities. If you're a tank, dig out those healing abilities. Separate that stuff off so you can focus on what's important for your role. And then take a look at the abilities that obviously aren't going to be a part of your rotation because you can't use them in combat or they don't do anything useful in combat. And then finally, the last thing I'd mention here is don't forget that time is a resource. And pay attention to your cooldowns and how often you're using your abilities in any given amount of time. If you've got that Avenging Wrath that has a 2-minute cooldown and you're using it once every 10 minutes, you're capping on your resource. You're capping on time, and you could have used Avenging Wrath at least 3 times. At least 3 times in 10 minutes. And you should be, in order to optimize your DPS or your damage mitigation or whatever that may be. So when you get in and you start looking at your rotation, I'll tell you that the most important things for your rotation are going to be your resources and your core builders and spenders. If you can isolate those, focus on those, and learn how they all fit together, then you can move into the other stuff with a much better understanding of how it's going to affect that core rotation. Like, oh, if I hit this button, it gives me more energy, so I can hit more of these more often. So that's what I got for the guide here. Definitely a lot longer in terms of the subject matter compared to the previous one, but this is WoW Academy. This is the point. This is what I'm trying to do here, is to have these more educational live streams that you guys can tune into. I see Eggy's talking like crazy. Beth is still in here. Appreciate that. Great video. Thanks for taking the time to go over the things other content creators just assume people know already. That's about all I'm good at. Providing this sort of info for someone just starting out is so helpful. And that's really what I hope. You know, that's why the motto here is being casually confident. I want you guys to be confident in playing at a casual level. And, you know, I'm not here to get you into Mythic plus 12 or anything like that. I'm here to hopefully introduce you to the game, help you build on the fundamentals that you're bringing from other games, or maybe just give you some additional insight, hopefully from a fairly experienced player for World of Warcraft, so that you can head off in whatever direction you want to from here. Now, we've got more of the stream to go. This is definitely the end of the educational portion, and I've kind of like talked my butt off for an hour and a half. So typically we would have talked probably shorter, I think, depending on the subject matter, and then gone in and done more examples and talking and stuff. But I think with the amount that I've talked so far, I kind of am just going to flip the switch here and chill. I think I might just do another Torghast run, just for funsies. Either that, or I might just go and do some world quest and hang out in the chat so you guys can talk. So if you have an opinion on that, let me know in the comment section below. I'm going to check in with chat again, and I'm going to hydrate. Sort of. It's Mountain Dew. It's not like it's actual hydration. And we'll move on to the gameplay here at the end. So if you just want to chill, if you want to see some different classes in action, then I could play through and do some of my world quests, my dailies and stuff, which I really wouldn't mind doing. It's really nice. But if you really want to see Torghast on Prot Warrior, I could do that as well. So you guys let me know, and I reserve the right to just make up my own mind. Unless there's an overwhelming vote. Let me hydrate, check the chat, and then we'll get going. MB, you did miss all the good stuff. Carlton says, I'm looking forward to more detailed class guides. So those are going to be coming in WoW Academy Live, actually. I kind of made that judgment call myself because I feel like this is the format that I think I really like to teach in. And my more structured edited guides, I'm going to try to focus on add-on tutorials, add-on demos, guides for stuff that isn't class spell focused. So this week, I'm going to have a video that's what to do when you hit level 60. So that'll hopefully help you guys out when you hit max level. Like, here's kind of like what'll get you started, what the process looks like, you know, where to pick up weekly quests, what things you should be doing on a weekly basis and a daily basis. That's going to be coming out later this week. More weak auras guides, that kind of stuff. So all right, no votes, and I kind of appreciate that because I think I want to chill and do. I'm gonna go through. I'll show you guys like kind of. I've shown it before, but how I've been leveling my alts, and you guys will just look at a bunch of different classes. I think that's actually a decent way to cap this off. So maybe you can see some of the examples, and I'm not going to go super crazy into describing everything that's going on with every class, but I can at least highlight some of the points that I made as we look at the different classes. So I'm already here on Outlaw Rogue, so we'll just start with that. So I've got basically all my characters in Threads of Fate for leveling. And I'm using World Quest List, pretty sweet add-on that I highly recommend. World Quests lists right here. There's a bunch of these, so if you don't like World Quest list, you're basically just looking for a World Quest add-on. And right now I have this filtered down so that it only shows me gear and other World Quest options. If I click all these on, you're going to see this list gets a lot longer and it starts showing me other stuff. But I'm not trying to like get out here and like collect gold. I'm trying to focus on the money makers, the high return on investment quests. So what I'm actually looking for is gear upgrades that will help me get out there and and fight better. And I'm looking for bonus XP quests, because for these, you basically get double XP, and it's actually quite a bit of XP. I think it comes out to somewhere around 15% of an XP bar when you do one of these. So if I do all 4 of these, I'll probably get about 60% of a bar, and then I'll get, for these 2, if I go and do them, probably this like another 15%. So my process is log onto my alt, hop in, see, hey, are there any good gear upgrades? And in this case for Rogue, no, not really. I've got the option for an axe, which is not that much better than what I already have. And I have an option for a helmet, which is also not that much better than what I already have. So I'm probably going to skip on both these because I'm looking at time investment versus return. And I'm just going to go do these bonus XP quests. So I've got 1 in Maldraxxus and 3 in Ardenweld. So we'll go knock out the Maldraxxus one. Oh, this is the one where you have to run around and race. It's an interesting one. So what I'll do is I'll hit these bonuses and I'll log into a different alt and I will check and see, okay, are there gear upgrades? Are there bonus XP quests that I can do? And so on and so forth. So I think we're going right here, calling the champions. We got to run in a circle through these like light beams or whatever. If you guys have a class, not a specialization, but a class that you want to see me play next, you guys can throw it in the chat. I'm going to go through most of them. And so I'm down to pretty much play whatever you want to see next. Well, I'm ready for some WoW news, you guys. We got BlizzCon coming up, the online BlizzCon at the end of February. I'm still looking forward to that, seeing what's coming next. I wonder if they're going to talk about 8.1 or if we're going to get 8.1 before then. It'll be about 3 months. I imagine they'll probably talk about 8.1. I don't expect to see 8.1 before then, but I would imagine if they talk about it at BlizzCon, it'd be pretty close to release. I have no idea what's coming in 8.1. I just know, like, I got a lot of alts to level in the meantime. So this quest isn't going to be a great example to show off any of the combat or any of the stuff we just talked about, because this is more of a utility quest, if you want to look at it that way. All right, so we are looking for this quest right up here. All right. Let's go. No, I passed one. I've only done this quest like once. Hopefully my sprint kept me with enough speed that I'll still make it. No, I failed. Ah. I forgot I had to light the beacons. Gondor calls for aid. If my wife's not watching, I'm going to be sad that she missed that reference.
Oh no, I proud of you.
She's a big Lord of the Rings nerd. All right, let's try it again. I don't know if I actually have to come back to this one, but I'm just going to assume that I do. Yeah, I think I've literally done this quest one time. Click, 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 go. All right, 1 out of 5. I like these kind of like fairly simple, easy quests, especially when they're the bonus XP quests. Oh, you have to avoid the slimes? I'm on a rogue. I've got default bonus bonus movement speed, so I think I'll be okay. But I did not know that I had to avoid the slimes, so that is definitely a good tip. Yeah, I've got the, what is this talent here? Hit and run. Oh no, no. I got confused. Oh, don't you dare. I better not. Okay, go, 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 go. Well, somebody's running in the opposite direction as me. Makes sense that you could do that. Hey, there we go. Okay, so that got me about 10% of a bar for that one quest. Usually I say 15%. 15% is if you're rested and the quest involves some combat, then you usually get a good chunk there. All right, so next we're headed over to Ardenweld for 3 different quests. What do we have here? I don't think I've done the workshop one. I've done Squish and Burn. I don't think I've done a Matter of Stealth either. There's a lot of these world quests that I still haven't done, because I do a bunch of them like one time on an alt. Do I want to Hearth back? I'll probably just Hearth back. Did Kalios tracker get fixed for Mythic Plus? I love it, but in Mythic Plus it wouldn't disappear, so it clashed with timer add-ons. I'm not actually sure. I haven't been running any Mythic Plus because I've mostly been leveling my alt and doing Torghast. And it was like busted for Torghast at the start of the expansion. I know it got an update for Torghast at least, so now it works with, because it was doing a similar thing where it was like blocking or messing up the anima power windows and stuff. And I know that got fixed. So there's a pretty good chance that the Mythic Plus issue got fixed as well. The person that does the updates here is like, it's not that there's never issues, but they're pretty on top with the updates. So if you haven't, I would check it and give it a chance again. Because I honestly thought I was going to have to uninstall it because of the Torghast issues. I was like, I'm going to be in here all the time, and if I can't even like click to see my anima powers and stuff, this is going to be an issue. But it got fixed for that. Aren't we all Lord of the Rings nerds? I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of us are. So you guys, once again, while we're traveling here, I want to remind you, if you enjoyed this video today, please do throw a like on it. Show YouTube that you enjoyed it, whether you're watching it live or on a VOD. The likes are definitely appreciated. And I wanted to say again, like, thanks for the first episode. You guys really came out, and like I said, it's gotten double the views of my normal live streams. So that's a really good sign, really positive indicator. If you liked this video, take the time to share it and show it with to other people, because I really am using WoW Academy Live as a judge of how well the channel's doing and kind of the direction that I want to continue to move in the future. So if you like this kind of content and you want to see more, I'm not going to harp on you all the time to like and share and all that stuff, but like, this is definitely a good time to pull out the stops and do that stuff. Okay, so we've got stealth, we've got the eggs. Oh, they're all right here. That's actually pretty nice. We'll go and do this one off to the right first. So this week you should have the weekly updates coming out on Wednesday, and then I'm planning on the what to do at level 60 guide to be out on Friday. It may be Saturday. That should be out this week. And I was going to get Taco Bell for lunch, and my coworkers ended up like getting Chinese food. But now I'm thinking about Taco Bell again. Okay, so yeah, I definitely have not done this one. Oh, hey, we're a moth again. we got to do with this rose bush? Gather pollen. Spread the pollen everywhere. Okay. Okay, and we want to stay away from the bugs. Easy enough. I just actually have to find this pollen. Again, it's another non-combat quest. I wonder, like, at least one of these. I think the Gorm one is going to have combat in it. I was going to say that would kind of suck if, you know, I wanted to show that off. And we didn't. All these quests were just like these weird alternate quests. This quest seems a little bit annoying, actually. Maybe it's just because it's busy over here, but... kind of don't like that you can't do the stuff to the same enemy. And assume I still take fall damage. Like, yeah, like just finding one of these. There we go. He just respawned. Does this moth take fall damage? I feel like it shouldn't. It is a moth. Oh. This quest is incredibly boring. I will say, like, I like a lot of things about Shadowlands, but I feel like some of the quest design in this expansion really sucks. Wonder, can I stack these? I can't tell. Here we go. Yeah, I feel like some of the quest design in this expansion just has been pretty terrible. Really? Okay. Okay, it looked like it worked though. I think I got multiple stacks. Sometimes I don't know because I don't have a like fully finished version of my UI yet. It's like constantly being worked on. So sometimes, you know, I have issues like I might not have a buff that shows up or a bar. I am out of the area. Yeah, there's been some quests where like I just have to go to Wowhead to figure out, or I've had to go to Wowhead to figure out just what the quest wanted me to do. And a lot of times it's because like the spawn timers were super slow or something. Like there's a quest out in Rivendreth where you have to, I'm sure you guys know it, you have to pick up the dredger and you have to throw them on top of junk piles. Like we're both going over here like, hey, here's one of these. Can we do it? But you have to pick up a dredger and you have to throw them onto junk piles. And when I first did that quest, the first time I ever did it, I picked up a dredger and I was like, okay, cool, I got to do something with this guy. And there was literally nothing around for me to throw him on. And I was like, what am I supposed to do? And like, I'd never done the quest before, so I didn't know that that's what I was supposed to do. I didn't know that I had to wait for them to respawn and stuff. And so I just kind of stood there and I was like, what even is this quest? Do I just hold this guy? Am I supposed to hug him? Like, what am I supposed to do? And so I ended up having to like go to Wowhead and be like, okay, what am I supposed to do on this quest? And it was like, oh, you need to throw them on top of the trash piles or, you know, the broken carriages. And I was like, what broken carriages? There aren't any. Oh, this looks bad. I was trying to get to that guy over there, but that's like it's a tough area to get to. So yeah, there's been stuff like that where, you know, like the quest isn't necessarily like bad. But the spawn timers and stuff just make you kind of go, what? But then there's been other ones that are just straight up bad as well. All right, so about 17%. I would love a Flight Master's whistle. Not gonna lie. Give him Taco Bell. I'm not sure if we have plans for dinner. Got like a honey garlic glazed chicken with green beans and red potatoes, I think is the plan. Sounds too healthy though, right? I got Mountain Dew, I need Taco Bell. That's how it goes. I think that if there's only the one combat quest here, I might just do the combat quest a couple times on the stream and then do these off stream. I know it's pretty chill, just kind of sitting here hanging out, but I don't know. I prefer to show you guys fighting. All right, we're gonna get to fight on this one. Yeah, okay. Oh, okay, it's the torch the egg sacks one. But we also have to, oh yeah. We're gonna get into some fights, but this one isn't specifically fighting. Man, this one, I don't even necessarily have to fight anything for this one either. Oh man, it's not going the way I wanted it to. Hey, come on, fight me. Oh, we got a third one. Okay, this should be interesting. Oh, Rogue. I should have used Blade Flurry. I'm so used to picking off targets one by one as a rogue. Okay. Good thing my roach stompers aren't on cooldown. Yeah, I agree. Ugh, throw the torch faster. Why do you have to wind up? Is it easier to run these things over on your mount? No, doesn't seem like it. I feel like I had an easier time doing this on a fatter character. It could just be my imagination though. Okay, we don't need to torch anything anymore. Let's just get these little worms. Oh, guys, we got WandaVision coming out on Friday, right? Anybody else excited about that? I'm pretty pumped about it. Listen here, you on your mount, just like I was heading this direction, stomping worms. Okay, I don't appreciate that. Punk. Those are mine to stomp on. Really? Really? Oh my goodness. There we go. All right, let's go over to this other one here. That was a little ridiculous. Now this one I have not done before either. We'll workshop it. Check it out. Yeah, WandaVision is coming out on Friday. I'm pretty excited to check that out. I like stuff Marvel. I'm not necessarily a Marvel fanatic, but I definitely enjoy it. Sacks of supplies. I've been over here for that other quest. Was it over here? No. That was an actual quest, not a world quest. It just was in this area. Okay, I think this one technically we would get into a lot of combat. It's just pretty crowded over here. Wow. Nice. Got him with that aim shot crit, man. That was beautiful. Hey, your alliance. Okay, we both get credit, I guess. Hey, you can have that one. Hello, Hydra. You're not an elite, so I'm not too worried. I guess it's also kind of hard to go over abilities because of my weird normal UI that doesn't actually have action bars. Okay. 4 more supplies. So normally what I'll do is I'll collect these, or I'll do these world quests. I'll get however much of an XP bar this is going to be, which it looks like it's going to wind up being probably a little bit over 30% of a bar. And then I'll go and I'll do this on my other characters. So I won't actually like get a level on the rogue today, but I'll get 30% of a level on like all my characters. Which across like 10 characters that I'm still leveling, that's like getting 3 levels. Well, it's just spread across stuff. Where are these supplies? Here's one. Hello. Hey, let's go. We got 2 of them. This time I'll actually use Blade Flurry. Yeah, that works out a lot better. 1 more sack of supplies. Ooh, got an herb over here. I bet it disappears right about the time I get to it. Oh, it's not an herb, it's a mine. Okay, that's less likely to disappear. I found there's a lot of people on my server anyway, or, you know, my shards, I guess, that are doing herb gathering. Not as many are doing mining, which is kind of funny because I don't think all my herbs sold on this server. I think the market might be a little bit oversaturated. Can you guys actually read this up here to see what abilities I'm using? Because I put that up there hoping that, you know, as I play, you guys can see what buttons I'm actually pushing, which hopefully will give you some clarity, but it'll also make me look like a noob a little bit. Just because you understand what's going on doesn't mean you always hit the right buttons. Where is this last sack of supplies, man? This is driving me nuts. Okay, it's probably up here. Yeah, it's okay. There's going to be one up here for sure. There we go. Oh my goodness. 18 hours. I think these world quests took me longer than the whole spiel about spells and abilities did. Deliver the supplies. How do you know the health of the enemy you're fighting? Oh, I see the unit on the bottom left. It was just small. Yeah. So I have it right here. Plus, I've got nameplates as well. Which they're not on for some reason. Yeah. So I do have nameplates. I just wasn't paying attention to the fact that they were turned off for whatever reason. I probably fat fingered the button earlier. And normally I know the cooldowns of my abilities because of weak auras, but I don't have them set up on my rogue yet. So I'm kind of just winging it. It's not that big of a deal when I'm leveling to really be paying too much attention to the cooldowns of my like long abilities. But I do have those built in. Sweet. Okay, so that got me, yeah, that got me basically a third of a level doing those 4 quests, being kind of strategic there. It didn't take too long. It took about 20-25 minutes maybe. But if I had, you know, done these quests before, I would have done it faster. So I can show you, since we're here, I think I might do one more. And I'll show you one of the ones that has like the full UI going on. If I can remember which ones do. I think Warrior does. I got a lot of weak auras. I'm looking for one that has the cooldowns. Ooh, I kind of want to do Survival Hunter. I don't have cooldowns on Survival Hunter, but I could do Paladin. Paladin's another. Yeah, we'll do Paladin real quick because I have the cooldowns and stuff set up on there. I've still got a couple more ideas for some weak auras stuff that I've really been getting into weak auras. Honestly, weak auras has been like keeping me like really enthralled with WoW stuff to the detriment of my in-game progress and leveling because I just sit there and I'll spend like 20 or 30 minutes like just working on a weak auras thing, trying to figure out a problem. And I'm like, you know what? I could have probably been another level higher by now. I can't take this transmog. I wanted a new transmog for my Paladin. I've been working on new transmogs for Shadowlands, but I just haven't come up with anything that I really like yet. So, but I also don't want to run around looking like this. So I'm just going to use one of my old ones, I think. I like the white purple one. Oh, if you guys don't have this add-on, you really need to get it. And just my opinion. Whatever it's called. I forget. What is it called? Wider Transmog Preview. Oh my goodness. If you guys are looking at this, see how much wider this window is? Like, I don't have the items like crowded in on my character. Oh, this makes such a difference. Wider Transmog Preview. If this drives you insane, that's a super lightweight add-on that fixes this problem. And it's awesome. I used to have like this kind of, you know what? I'm going to go old school. Wait, which one's the cheapest? That one. Do I want to go cheap? Ah, no, I got 17K. I'll go old school. Do purple gems. This is from back when my Paladin was a dude. Yeah. Do I have a better shield? I know I got this Alliance one, but I made this one a while ago. I guess I could use, like, Truth Guard now. That one's okay. Like the blue. Don't know about the blue. That one actually would be alright if it didn't have the bones. That one's too much of a tree. That one kind of sort of fits. Whatever. We're going to roll with the one I got. Alright, so let's get out there and you can see like a more extensive weak aura setup, I guess. Totally getting that add-on? Yeah, absolutely. That was driving me nuts. I was like, I can't even on the undead. I don't have enough space. I can't see my character. Stupid item icons just keep getting in the way. Alright, so I'm going to go straight out to Ardenweald where I can do the ones that actually require some combat here. I'll skip the other ones for now. Like I said, I'll do those. I'll do those off stream. Or maybe not at all. I don't know. Probably going to record some videos for Pixel Pathfinder after the stream's over. Which, if you don't know, boom! Promo! Pixel Pathfinder is my second channel. That's focused on indie games. And if you're into indie games and stuff like that, you should definitely check it out. There's a link to it on the main I need to start putting a link to it in the description below so I can say that. There isn't one there now, but I'll try to sneak one in there. But there's a link to it on the main page of the channel if you scroll all the way down to the bottom. And January is actually my birthday month. And I am trying to hit 250 subs over on Pixel Pathfinder. So if you're into that stuff and you randomly hear this promo and you want to give me a free birthday present, you can go over there and sub. But if you're not into that stuff, like, I don't want you to sub if you're just going to get ignored or get annoyed by, you know, all those videos popping up. Because I do put out 4 to 5 videos a week over there. Gameplay videos. But if you don't mind, definitely appreciated. All right, so let's go show some of this off a little bit. I'm still protection rank. Okay. I changed a lot of specs and I was like, I don't want to wander in there and be like, oh man, I'm holy. All right. Squish and burn. Yeah, I definitely smell something. I think egg is over there cooking that dinner. It's a honey garlic chicken. All right, so this is a little bit of a better example. I've got my buff timers over here. I've got my big cooldowns over here if I want to use them, which I could. I could use my Avenging Wrath here, but if I was going to use Avenging Wrath right now, I would honestly do a bigger pull on a Prot Paladin anyway. I think I need to stop casting Consecration because I just keep pulling more stuff. Okay, burn them eggs. You know, whatever. Let's do. What do I have? Blessing of Summer. Okay, that's the additional damage buff. Still trying to keep track of these blessings. Let's go. Let's pull... that's not a lot. I guess I'm going to hit some extra stuff, so that'll work. Let's go. Ooh, what? What was... I was taking a lot of damage there. What? Did I miss? There we go. Oh, I don't have the, I keep forgetting I don't have the DPS add-on up for this one, so you guys can't see my skills and stuff that I'm casting. Two more. Oh, what? It just disappeared. Freaking lag. Come on. Okay, there we go. All right, we'll do this one over here. And then I'm going to be heading out for the evening. So if you guys are hanging out here with me, I got one more world quest I'm going to be doing. So you can get your final questions in, or, you know, whatever you need to do there. And I want to, again, say thanks to all of you who tuned in and watched. Thanks to any of you who decide to watch the VOD and make it this far. I hope that WoW Academy Live is still a useful resource, is still showing promise and everything, and that you guys are still excited about it. Like I said, if you have questions, you can add them to the comment section below. If you have ideas for WoW Academy Live episodes that you'd like to see, you can submit those as well. Not going to guarantee anything, but, you know, I always like to hear about your ideas and the things that you want to see. So I'll definitely take that into consideration. And yeah, I hope you are enjoying the new stuff for the channel in 2021, and just like kind of the direction I've decided to go with everything. And yeah, I don't know what else there is to say. All right, let me see. I'm going to turn on details real quick. And then I think I want Top Chef. I think. No. Profiles. Who, my rogue had it, right? Okay. Nope, that's my Death Knight. Who has it up? Oh, my shaman has it up. Is my shaman in here? No? It's gonna drive me nuts. Okay, I don't know. I tried. Man. I know we're having that honey garlic chicken, but it just smells like garlic bread right now. It smells pretty good. I like garlic as a seasoning, but I don't like overwhelming amounts of garlic. Probably because I worked a lot of graveyard shifts. Come over here. Let's have a party. Anything? Oh yeah, I forgot. It's not tracking my word of glory the way that I want it to. What an interesting way to cast spells. Yeah, it's interesting. It's weird, and I do it because of my disability. I have carpal tunnel and nerve issues in my arms, and it just makes it a lot easier for me to play the game. And honestly, if I couldn't use this method, I probably would just quit playing. I also use a trackball mouse, which is another interesting thing. And if I didn't have a trackball mouse, like there's no way I'd be able to play. That's funny. I tried to play Risk of Rain 2 with a buddy over the Christmas holidays, and I think we played for maybe an hour and a half or something, but constantly having to hold the forward movement button destroyed my hands. I mean, destroyed them. And that's usually what happens to me if I have to use a regular mouse for too long, or if I have to like hold the forward key a bunch or hold down any key or stretch too much or anything like that, then I get into a lot of pain, and then I can't play at all. Man, don't drop those guys on me. Sticking to single target here. I'm not trying to get any extra aggro. Yeah, you take all those guys. Try to put them in my consecration. I'm not taking them. But I do have a whole video about this. If you want to check it out just for curiosity's sake, you can check out the channel and just search for Opie, O-P-I-E, and you'll see a couple guides and stuff come up, guide videos. What do you think of Nathria and the dungeons in this expansion? I have not done Nathria. I'm not really much of a raider anymore. I did most of my raiding in Burning Crusade and Warlords of Draenor. No, Mista Pandaria. I always get those two confused because they actually blended those expansions pretty well, I think, in between. So yeah, I did most of my raiding in Burning Crusade and Mista Pandaria, and I generally just don't raid much anymore. I do legacy raids for like transmogs, and occasionally I jump into LFR. So I haven't done any Nathria yet. Like I said, I've been focusing on leveling my alts and playing Torghast for the most part. But I do think the raid looks really cool. Like, not talking about the encounters or anything, but just the raid itself looks really cool. And I think the transmog sets from the raids look dope. There's a lot of... I think they did a pretty good job with the transmogs on this one. Oh yeah, it's this guy over here. They can repair stuff. I've used an Orb Weaver the entire time I've played WoW. I would struggle if I had to play normally. Is that a trackball mouse or is it something weird? I have heard of it before, but it's not popping up in my head. Orb Weaver. Oh. Okay. Gotcha. So I'm literally using this and this right now to play. So I'm actually using both, and they both help quite a bit. So yeah, that's pretty interesting. Mine is the Razer Tartarus V2. I just got it couple months ago. I haven't had it for too long, but I really like it. I enjoy it quite a bit. That's why occasionally you'll see me like hit the wrong keybind, is because like I'm still getting my keybinds figured out for all of it, but I like using that stuff. I'm I'm really starting to get the hang of it and enjoy this combination, especially because you can put your arms like exactly where you want them to be. That's like a whole nother video I want to make, like playing WoW comfortably and minimizing the stress and stuff on your hands and everything. Mark Campbell, hey there, just want to pop in and say that your tanking guides were helpful when learning the classes. Awesome. Glad that you got some help out of those. Hey, 4570's back. Saw somewhere you're an Air Force vet. What was your AFSC, if you don't mind me asking? I was security forces for 21 years. So I don't like to blow this out of proportion. I was in the Air Force. I am an Air Force vet. I do have a service-connected disability, but I'm not like tooting my own horn or trying to claim that I did anything fantastic. I was supposed to be in for 6 years. I was in for 3 years. I was medically separated because of my disability. And I got stuck in training for the entirety of the time because of my service-connected disability. The short, not too many details version is I needed to be 100% physically fit to move to the next portion of my training. And because I was never able to get to that point due to my disability, I was never able to get out of training. So the training that I did do, I crushed it and did an awesome job, but I never got to that final leg. So for the last like year that I was in, I was technically still in training, but I was doing a job that had nothing to do with my AFSC. I was supposed to be an airborne Korean linguist, and I did all the Korean language training. So 한국말 할 수 있어요. I can do a little bit of Korean. Forgotten a lot of it because I don't use it too much because I'm not too big of a fan of a lot of Korean stuff. I don't have anything against Korean stuff, just like I don't like K-pop, I like J-rock, you know, that kind of stuff. So that's what I did. And, you know, like I said, the facts, those are facts, but I'm not going to sit here and, you know, pretend that I did anything crazy. I did a bunch of training. I had a really abnormal experience. And I tell people constantly, don't judge based on my experience, because my experience was weird. Okay, that didn't count for me. Bought that one for my daughter last week. Did you bought the Tartarus? Or the Orb Weaver, or what specifically? Kind of talked a lot in between those, so I didn't catch it. Plus there's a lag on the stream, so a lot of times I have a hard time connecting the dots because of the delay. Hey, here we go. Oh, there's another one, but I don't have pollen. Oh, wait. Do I have pollen? Looks like I do. Hey, I do. Nice. Your vid's got me to tanking too. I for sure missed it. Anyone know what the quest add-on in the upper right is? Kaliel's quest tracker. 4570's got it. And I do have a video on my channel that is my UI and add-ons for Shadowlands. So you could check that out, and basically almost everything in my current UI is listed in there somewhere. And there should be timestamps for each of the different add-ons as well. So you could hit that up, and Kaliel's tracker will have a section in there. The Tartarus, yeah, it's pretty dope. I like it a lot. outside of WoW these days, like mostly I prefer to play a lot of turn-based strategy games. And that's where a lot of my indie game coverage goes, is the turn-based strategy games, and also stuff that I can play with a controller, because the turn-based games only require me to use the mouse. So that definitely reduces some strain and stuff on there. And The stuff I can play with a controller, that's using my hands in a different way. And it doesn't bother me near as much as a keyboard and mouse. I really hate this quest. I think I'm just gonna pass this quest in the future. Like, this quest is super annoying. There are some quests like that where I'm just like, nah, I'm not doing that one. Some of them are annoying, but they're still not that difficult to do, or, you know, they don't take up that much time. Like, there's the Parasol one in Rivendreth that I just don't enjoy doing that one at all, but I'll do it because it's not that hard, and it usually has a pretty good reward tied to it. Oh, I didn't check for gear upgrades on my Paladin. What do we got? We got a belt that is basically the same. 2% upgrade helmet. Okay. I think I have to, I think I'm kind of capping out on the gear score for my alts right now based on level and renown. Because I know the gear score will go up. Obviously, as you level, you get better eye level rewards, but I believe it's based on your renown as well. To a degree. I need more pollen. Biggest difference is that it doesn't have the adjustments that the Orb Reaver has, and the bottom row of the Tartarus only has 4 buttons where the Orb Reaver has 5. Yeah, that's true. I was worried about the adjustability, because obviously if I was picking up the Tartarus to see if it would help me with, you know, my hand positioning and pain and stuff, and obviously having the ability to customize that and make adjustments would make it better in that regard, but it actually turned out for my hand, like, this has been pretty decent. The lack of customization has not been too bad. I do feel like it's hard to reach some of the buttons, but I just usually put those, I map those to like my guild button or my group finder, you know, the stuff I'm not going to hit all the time. Those utility menu options. Not my proactive and my reactive ones. Man, this time I can't find the pollen. There's plenty of dudes around, but I can't find the pollen. Oh my goodness. Seriously, what the heck? I don't want to find the pollen. I'm already hating my allergies right now. What the heck? I don't even care anymore. Catch me. Catch me. I don't care. Oh no. I have to do something a little more interesting for a minute. Heaven forbid. These guys have a decent amount of health. Oh, it turned me back into a moth. Okay. Did I have pollen this whole time? Did I get it off these guys? Did I only have to get it once? I don't know anymore. I don't know. I don't know. I hate this quest. I'm done with this quest. One more guy. Orb Reaver also uses mechanical, whereas Tartarus uses membrane. Oh, yeah. I actually like, especially with streaming, I was not really wanting to get mechanical. I don't know. I think mechanical is a little bit overrated if you're not doing like high intense reaction stuff like FPS shooters or professional MOBA game playing and that kind of stuff. In that case, like, sure, like get your mechanical keys, but I've had mechanical keys before and like, I don't know, for my purposes that they never really made a difference, but I'm not a pro gamer. So I'm not like, no, my reaction time could have been 0.8 milliseconds faster. Dang it. I'm just like, oh, yep, I probably would have got shot there anyway. Okay, so no upgrades here. I want to get at least one gear upgrade, man. This is driving me a little nuts. These rewards kind of suck right now. Poopa Trooper is one I never do. Is that the one I just did? No, that's... Which one is Poopa Trooper? I wonder if I've done that one. Ardenweld, Poopa Trooper. Looking it up on Wowhead. Alright, I could go do that race one, but I'm just going to check on a couple other characters and see if there are any item level upgrades, the ones I want to play. Oh, I don't think I've done this one. Yeah, I haven't done this one. It looks annoying. It looks like it's a jump puzzle or something. Oh, this is one of the... Is this one of the ones where they make you fly around and stuff? Yeah, that looks a little annoying. Give me an upgrade. 3%. Okay, I think these rewards just suck. What about Death Knight? My Death Knight's lagging a little bit behind. %. 84% upgrade. Okay, there's a helmet. That's a huge upgrade. Yeah, that's gonna take me from my eye level 60 Azeroth gear. Okay, we can go do that. Oh, this is pulling hairs. Oh, this is a super gross one. I really like Maldraxxus though. Not gonna lie. Okay, I gotta transmog this. I'm not gonna transmog my DK. I'm about to get a helmet, so. Okay, we're going to do this one, and then this is going to be the end of the stream. I wanted to get at least one gear upgrade on stream. I was just being stubborn. Okay, let's go. That's a pretty good... Yeah. I'm still... You guys, I'm still in a lot of cases. I think my hunter... I was rocking 2 heirloom trinkets that were not... You know, they're not Shadowlands upgraded. They capped out at the bottom tier of like BFA. So my hunter was rocking 2 heirloom trinkets, and I replaced one. I got it as a reward from a bonus objective, but I still have 1 heirloom trinket on my hunter. It's kind of sad. Like some of my gear on my alts is like pretty terrible. Pretty terrible. Some of my characters still just have heirloom gear in general, but look at this. I got that. Ooh, still got a Azerite gear helmet. This guy's not terrible. I think his... Okay, gloves suck. Pants suck. Rings and trinkets. 1 trinket is pretty awful. I mean, I'm just lucky I got the... like the pre-patch weapons on most of my characters. They would be in terrible shape. I don't have like the legendary cloak or like anything. This dude's eye level is 81. All right. So I'm Frost on my DK. I should be. Yeah, I'm still Frost. Okay. I don't want drawing out the poison. I want pulling hairs, which is down here. I think they did a great job with this zone. I actually really love this zone. It is really gross, and it does gross me out. Like, don't get me wrong. It does gross me out. But I think they just did like such a good job with it. Like stuff like this where it kind of like looks like grass, but then you realize you're like pulling hair out of like skin. And this is like teeth or bones. It's like super gross. Okay, looks like we need to... I did not mean to use my slappy hands ability, but okay. I meant to use Remorseless Winter. I got 1 bristles out of that? You gotta be kidding me. Why do I keep doing that? Oh, because I have a Remorseless Winter in my core rotation. Not my offensive abilities. Got it. I keep reactively trying to... so I've got my Opie ring set up according to some of the categories that I laid out earlier. And I normally put my offensive abilities over in this one. And technically Remorseless Winter, I've got it built into my core rotation as part of the builder spenders. But... I keep like reflexively trying to cast it from the offensive abilities. Hello. You prefer two-handed or dual blades? It doesn't really matter to me. I already had a two-hander equipped. I was playing Unholy, but I actually didn't like it as much as I thought I would. I was giving it a shot, giving it a try. It's not terrible, but I ended up going back to Frost, and I just already had a two-hander equipped, so I just rolled with it. It depends on the build. I think overall I'd rather do two-handed because it's only one weapon that I have to replace and keep upgraded, as opposed to playing dual wield where I've got 2 weapons that I've got to get, you know, upgraded and replaced. But there's a build or two for Frost that I think work better with two-handers that I do enjoy. So I'm not doing that build right now, but if I was, then I would go two-handers. My hair. Yeah. Well, they're after the boars anyway. Hey, there's another one. This one over here too. Oh, you know what? I don't have my organ run speed ability on here. Oh, if you guys didn't know, odd thing, you may have figured it out by now, but if you're playing on a Worgen, your running wild racial, which basically turns you into a mount, actually works in the Maw. Unless they hotfixed it. I don't know. I think it was intentional, so I think they left it in. So if you're playing on a Worgen, you kind of have a little advantage there. I know it worked in beta, and I know it worked in the early portion of the expansion. I don't think they hotfixed it. Gotta love that. Oops. There's a companion. Yeah, I think I got it on my warlock, I believe. And I did just get the treasure. I got the egg. I'm pretty sure that's what it is, right? And it should be this. Hairy egg. Get away from me. No. It's too late. I was going to try to get in on that action. Oh well, I'll do these. Give me the last one. You two, get over here. I could go all slappy hands, but I won't. Hey. Got the helmet. Very nice. Sweet. Let's get the heck out of here. Nope, we're not going to Dalaran. Gives you a furry egg. Yeah, I got it. So, all right, everybody, that's going to do it for today's episode of WoW Academy Live. Once again, thanks for sticking with me here towards the end. Definitely appreciate it. Don't forget you can tune in every Monday at 6:30 p.m. for another episode of WoW Academy Live, where we discuss something related to World of Warcraft from a sort of classroom perspective. Trying to learn and expand our knowledge of the game a little bit more to help you play more confidently at a casual level. So tune in to those if you like. Don't forget to check out the weekly update video that comes out on Wednesdays. Keep an eye out for my more edited and produced guides to come out every 2 weeks or so. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button. Tune in for more great World of Warcraft tools, resources, and guides. If you're already here and you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. Don't forget, you can check out my second channel, Pixel Pathfinder, for indie games coverage. Link to that is on the main page of the channel, and I'll have it in the description by the time this video gets edited. To everybody who chatted live, appreciate it. Questions, comments, throw them in that comment section and let me know. And I'll see what I can help you with. So, alrighty, y'all. Beth, have a good one. 4570, if you're still around, have a good one as well. Everybody that tuned in, appreciate it. I'm going to go eat. This stream was way longer than I thought it was going to be, but it was fun. I really enjoyed it. I hope you did too. Hope you're having fun in World of Warcraft Shadowlands. Appreciate you being here on the channel. I'll catch you on the next stream. Peace. You can totally spam my chat. Actually, spamming my chat is the best thing you can do in live streams because it keeps it interesting, keeps it entertaining for me. So never, ever, ever feel bad about spamming my chat with actual conversation. So, yeah. More of that. Definitely appreciate it. All right.